Okay, I'm just waiting for the last two connections here, so please bear with me. Okay. It looks like everybody who's was trying to log in has logged in. So just for the record, today is July 20, 2023, and it's 1 p.m. So this is the afternoon session in the State Water Resource Control Board Administrative Hearings Office proceeding on the court's reference to the State Water Board in City of Marina versus RMC Lonestar, Monterey County Superior Court, case number 20 CV 001387. And my name is Alan Lilly. I'm the senior hearing officer with the State Water Board's Administrative Hearings Office. It looks like all the appearances are the same as they were this morning. So I'm not going to ask for those again. Mr. Osias, before the noon break, I said I wouldn't have any questions. It turns out I do have just a couple, so I'm going to just ask those, and then I'll ask you for your time estimate.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Kincaid, there has been discussion of what we refer to as the June 1 version of the model, June 12th and June 16th. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And have you now run all 12 scenarios with the June 16 version?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and I noticed I was in reviewing your testimony and reports and Ms. Nelson's that some of that testimony just referred to the A scenarios, just basically you said because of time, you had not been able to compile the outputs for the B, C, and D scenarios. But if we include a request or direction for output, and we'll list the types of information we want, are you now in a position to be able to provide output files, figures, tables, and so forth relatively expeditiously?
Relatively. We've run everything, but it hasn't been organized into a deliverable yet, so it might take a few days to pull that together.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm just thinking in terms of a few weeks.
No, sir. It's all been run.
So a few weeks will not be a problem?
A few weeks will not be a problem, no.
Yeah, okay. And what I'm going to do is, after we're finished tomorrow, I'm going to work with my staff to compile a list of what we're looking for, because as I think I mentioned this morning, I'd like to get the output information that we want in a format where we can compare the outputs from the Marina Coast model with the outputs from the Cal-Am model, so we can explain that to the court. I think Ms. Nelson summed it up quite well this morning at the end of her testimony when she said it looks like, notwithstanding there were some significant differences in model assumptions, and there certainly are, the model results are, I'll just say, relatively close. And the big question for us moving forward, questions are interpretation of those model results, and then also, of course, a potential application of those model results to the solute transport modeling and the dual density or variable density modeling and related things. So it's sort of good news and bad news. I do think it's good news that the model results are fairly close. It means that for our report, probably for a lot of the parameters, we can report those in our draft report in terms of here's MCWD's model results, here's Cal-Am model results. And if they're relatively close, then that's a range that, and of course, we will have some comments on our evaluation of the model assumptions, but that will help get us past that step on to the next step. The bad news, I guess, is the next step. There clearly are some significant disagreements. I don't know if it's bad news or not, but there are significant disagreements that we are going to have to try to resolve in the draft report and at least provide our opinions and conclusions in the draft report. And assuming the State Water Board adopts those, then that will be what goes to the court. So anyway, I just wanted to check on that. So with that plan.
Mr. Lilly, can I just follow up with another related to that? I'm not sure all the particle tracking model files that found their way into the reports have also been uploaded or shared. And so if they haven't, I'd join in your request that be done.
Okay, so thank you, and that's important. So for both sides, I'm going to turn to you, Mr. Osias, and you, Mr. Brochard, as sort of the lead attorneys for the sides here. If there are any model files from the other side, modeling files that you don't think you have, that you should have, why don't you each prepare a list? I hope it's fairly short, and send it to us by email. Of course, you know the drill, CCs to everyone on the list. And then as necessary, we can include that in our post-hearing order. There's a lot of material, and I know you're all doing the best you can, but I want to try to clean up this phase before we go on to the next phase. So, and that will be part of it. So thank you. I think I'm going to just go ahead and specify a deadline so I don't have to issue an order on that. This shouldn't be very hard. So let's have a deadline. Monday's the 24th. Let's have a deadline of July 26th, which is next Wednesday, 1 p.m. This is the deadline for emails to the AHO listing any modeling files that you believe the other side has not provided that you think they should provide. I'm writing this down to just. My composition may not be great, but I wrote down any modeling files that you think the other side has not provided that you think they should provide. And if there are no such files, just send us an email as well saying we don't think there's anything else. But it sounds like, at least from CalAM's point of view, there are some files that they think they still need. And frankly, don't forget, you can always talk to each other. There are no ex parte prohibitions on your talking to each other. And rather than my having to put it in an order, if you can call up, or even better, if you'll let your technical experts call each other. I mean, I know they disagree on a lot of things, but I also get the sense they can talk to each other. So the easiest way is call them up and say, hey, I'm missing this file. Can you upload it or send it to us? Whatever's the best thing. Probably upload it so we can put it in our record as well. But if not, then if that doesn't work, then by July 26, 1 p.m., send us the email. But please, in the jargon of discovery, try to meet and confer and resolve these issues if you can.
And I do think the experts have reached out to each other for exchange of files in the past. I think they have a Dropbox or a share site that they've used. So
yes.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Please keep doing that. That just saves us all a lot of grief to do that. So anyway, with that, we are going to, I don't know that we will have very many questions. We are honing in on this. I think, as I say, things are becoming relatively clear for this phase. Clearly, there are issues remaining for the next phase. But so we may have some questions for Dr. Kincaid, Ms. Nelson tomorrow morning, but not at this point. So with that, Mr. Osias, what is your estimated plan and time frame for cross-examination of these two witnesses?
So I estimate up to 90 minutes with Dr. Kincaid, who I'd like to start with, recognizing there'll be an absolute hard stop at 2 p.m. for you.
And then what is your estimate for Ms. Nelson?
So it's a little bit in flux based on how it goes with Dr. Kincaid, but anywhere from 30 to 60, but probably closer to 30, depending upon what I expect to learn from Dr. Kincaid.
Okay, and I'm trying to be fair, uniform here. I think yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I allowed Marina Coast a total of 1 hour for cross-examination and City Marina 1 hour for cross-examination. So that was 2 hours total. So I do expect you, Mr. Osias, I want to try to limit your total cross-examination for both these witnesses to 2 hours, just so we're we're fair. I mean, if it's a couple of minutes over and you have or want to go a couple of minutes over and you have an offer of, here are the topics I still want to cover, I'll consider that tomorrow morning, but let's try to have the total. And I don't care how you distribute it between the two witnesses. And are you going to do the cross-examination of both witnesses?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So with that,
no comments, please.
oh, what kind of comments would I make? You're a very good lawyer. I would never say otherwise.
Something like you got the short straw.
Oh, well, yeah, you can talk to Mr. Betts about who got the deal. I mean, you're all very qualified attorneys. This is one of the best group of attorneys I've ever worked with. So I appreciate that. I never would say anything otherwise. So yeah, maybe you got the short straw. But anyway, I'm going to treat it as 1:15, so 45 minutes today, and then we'll see where we are. And of course, we will be more than happy to screen share any exhibits as we go forward. I do want to stop promptly at 2 p.m., almost mid-sentence, but not quite. So go ahead, Mr. Osias, with your
and I encourage you to interrupt me if I'm lost in concentrating and don't see the clock tick. Just I'll stop the moment you say.
Yeah,
so,
that's fine. Thank you.
Dr. Kincaid, we have visited before, and so we will do it again. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
One of the purposes of this phase is to model the incremental change caused or potentially caused by the project, correct?
Correct.
And that's a more technical way of saying, what's the situation based on the models without the project and compared to with the project? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Can we start with MCWD 161, slide 50? And I apologize if I'm off by a number, but I'm trying to start where Dr. Kincaid started.
And that's fine. We all do the best we can. So we'll put that up. And if it's not the right slide, we'll move around. So exhibit MCWD 161, slide 50. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Kincaid, and I apologize, Mr. Lilly. I keep forgetting to let you announce what page we're on. And
I said it before. This is slide 50 on the screen now. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So Dr. Kincaid, the two illustrations on the left side of the screen are not a comparison of the model results for without the project compared to with the project, correct?
No, that's incorrect. The one on the right is a drawdown map. So it is a comparison and then a subtraction of the condition of pumping relative to the condition of non-pumping, and then a subtraction of that drawdown from the real world conditions that are depicted on the left.
So the right is actually, let me back up. For vocabulary reasons, we have two with project rows, I think, in a table prepared by the administrative hearing officer. A smaller project with a 2 as a descriptor and a larger project with a 3, correct?
Correct. This would be I believe it's the 3. It's the 15.5 MGD.
Okay. And so a comparison is a 3 versus 1 versus or a 2 versus 1, correct?
That's correct. That would be a drawdown, or any comparison, actually, yes.
Okay. And the picture on the right is not any of the ones. I'm sorry. The picture on the left. The picture on the left is not a modeled result of without the project, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the picture on the right, I think you just corrected me, is a picture of the difference of 3 versus 1 under some scenario.
It's scenario B, 3 versus 1 creates a drawdown, then subtracted from the map on the left.
Okay. Okay. And then the next slide 51?
Same
So-
for
and
Cal-Am's version of the model.
This is slide 51. Dr. Kincaid, I'm confused. I apologize, Mr. Osias. Is the figure on the right a subtraction of something from the figure on the left, or is a
Yes.
subtraction of 3B output versus 1B
No.
output?
The figure on the right is a depiction of what would happen if the drawdown predicted under scenario B3 occurs relative to the real world conditions that are depicted on the left. In other words, drawdown pulls the groundwater elevation down. So it took the real world depiction as it was interpreted to be in the spring of 2021 and subtracted the drawdown that is predicted by the scenario B3 models. And then the two slides reflect what would happen according to the two different models.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Lilly, because I didn't understand his answer either. The right illustration is B3 minus the picture on the left.
It's the picture on the left minus B3 minus, it's the picture on the left minus the drawdown derived from B3 and B1.
Okay, so neither slide 50 or 51 is a modeled comparison of a B1 versus B3 only.
No, that's not. B1 versus B3 produces the drawdown. The whole point to look at drawdown is to determine how that will affect the groundwater levels in the aquifer. So then I compared those to the real world conditions that are documented on the left and said, if this drawdown occurs, how will it affect the water table or the groundwater elevations that are depicted or that were measured in spring of 2021? So according to, if the drawdown from scenario B3 occurred in the spring of 2021, the map on the left or the map on the right is what the spring of 2021 conditions would have likely looked like.
And so the picture on the right would change every time we picked a different date and condition.
That's correct.
To on the left.
If you assume that the drawdown was static, which we do because it's a steady state model, and the real world condition fluctuates, then you would take, a fall of 2020 map and subtract the drawdown, and then that would be the conditions that would have occurred in the fall of 2020 had the drawdown been active or been operative.
Okay, so I appreciate that your answer started with "I agree," but nonetheless, please let me finish my question before you start to answer.
Okay.
You agree that comparing two model results, the model without the project and the model with the project, is different than using a model to predict what real world conditions will be?
No, I don't agree.
Okay. Can we go to Exhibit 160, I believe slide 29.
Okay, we'll go to MCWD 160, which I think is Ms. Nelson's slides. And which slide did you want?
29, please.
Okay, so exhibit MCWD 160, slide 29. And we now have slide 29 on the screen. Go ahead.
Thank you. And are you familiar with this slide, Dr. Kincaid?
Yes.
This is a picture of particle tracks.
Yes.
They're moving from the west to the east.
Yes.
And this is according to the top, an A3 setting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what the slide says.
And that's what you think it is too, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever produce, or have you seen anyone from MCWD produce a particle track with A1?
I can't recall.
You did not do that.
I did not produce particle tracks myself.
Did anyone on your team produce particle tracks?
Yes, that's where these particle tracks came from.
Did anyone on your team produce an A1 particle track?
I don't recall. We've produced a lot of particle tracks, some for non-pumping scenarios, and most of them for the 3 or the 2 scenarios. So it's quite possible that we did and that we have them, but I don't recall.
From this slide, you can't tell whether the particle tracks north of the capture zone are different than they would be without the capture zone, correct?
That's correct.
We go to the slide 30.
Okay, same exhibit, MCWD 160, slide 30.
And this is a similar illustration just for a different layer, correct?
Correct.
It's particle tracks from the ocean going inland, correct?
Yes.
Under a presumed A3 situation, that means with project pumping at the larger scale, correct?
Yes.
And to see if we'd have the same condition without the project, we should look at the model result and particle tracking for A1, correct?
Yes, that would be how you could determine change.
Okay. Can we go back to your slide deck?
Okay, we'll shift back to exhibit MCWD 161.
Thank you. And slide 45.
And go to slide 45. Slide 45 is now on the screen. Go ahead.
What I'll call let's start with north of the light blue capture zone. Those are particle tracks, correct?
Yes.
And those are particle tracks with the project?
I don't recall at this point.
Is the big light blue blob the capture zone?
It is, but those are 2 different sets of particle tracks over printed.
Oh, one was superimposed on the other.
Correct.
I see. So that make my next question a dumb one. Is the tail of the tadpole, which is what I think the light blue shape looks like, is that a particle track?
Those are combination. Those are reverse particle tracks. Yes.
Okay, and therefore the direction of particle movement is from the south primarily to the north?
Generally speaking, yes.
Well, I'm trying to make sure I understood what reverse particle track means. It means it's going towards the Slantwell project, not away, correct?
Yes.
And is that with or without the project?
That's the capture zone with the project.
And if you wanted to see how a particle dropped in the origination spot moved without the project, you would need to do something like this in a A1 or B1 or C1 or D1, correct?
That's correct. If you wanted to see the flow paths unaffected by the project.
So I know we didn't go through every page of your slide deck or Ms. Nelson's, but as you sit here today, you don't believe there's any without project particle tracks in either of your slide decks, correct?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And you watched Dr. Ye's testimony yesterday?
I watched most of it. I had to step away for a few minutes, but I watched most of it.
So I could try to find it, but I was hoping I didn't need to. Were you watching when particle track illustrations were put up on the screen as part of Dr. Ye's testimony?
I have to be more specific. Like I said, I walked away, so there was, I don't know when relative to exactly what you're asking.
I'm just asking if you saw any particle tracks yesterday watching the hearing.
I believe I did, yes.
And you recall that they had both a yellow and green coloration,
Yes,
and that the yellow, I believe, was without project and the green was with project. Do you remember that?
then we're talking about different particle tracks. The ones that I saw were colored by travel time.
Okay. So I'll come back and show you.
Oh, well, there were the particle tracks from the intrusion front, if those are the ones that you're talking about.
So say north of the capture zone, sort of like are illustrated here, but with maybe more of them.
I think I didn't see those then.
Okay. We can come back to that then. And I think we're done with this slide for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Lilly.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and take it down.
If you were going to total how much ocean inflow was going landward on the 5 reaches that have been identified in this proceeding. And let me pause. You know what I'm referring to with respect to the 5 reaches?
Yes, if you're talking about them CWD delineations, yes.
Yes, I think reach 3, I'm sorry, I'll start my question over to help you out. But reach 3, I think, was the capture zone reach.
Yes.
And then there's 2 north and 2 south.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So if you were going to total.
No, I'm sorry, there is confusion.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to CalAm's reaches. So in which case, yes, I'm familiar with that then. MCWD used a different geometry of reaches.
Okay, so let's use CalAm's for a minute because I don't think it'll matter, but I can count them on one hand. So if you were going to total the amount of ocean inflow across those reaches with the project running, you would add together the already occurring ocean inflow plus any newly caused inflow, correct?
If you break out the induced, then you would just be adding it back again. You would just look at it under the project scenario.
Well, I'm asking in simple terms without looking at a project result, just the components of an equation in a sense, although I'm no mathematician, but you would take a already occurring inflow and then anything additional induced by the project and add them together to get a total inflow, correct?
I wouldn't need to do that because the total under the project conditions is simulated directly by the 3 or 2 scenario. So what you're suggesting is that I would take the 3 or 2 scenario, subtract the 1, and then add it back in again. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay. And what you did erroneously is actually subtract out the already occurring.
I reported what is induced, and Dr. Ye correctly pointed out that the total is not what is induced, simply what the pumping scenario directly simulates.
And if you were going to total what was induced, would you subtract from the total the amount captured by the slant wells? And you would not.
No, because it's in the reach that is outside of the capture zone.
No, I wasn't. I was using all 5 reaches, remember, including the capture zone.
Okay,
You're going to total all the ocean inflow from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And without doing it as a model, if somebody could just give you the numbers, you take the original already occurring inflow across all 5 reaches, add all of the induced inflow, and subtract the inflow captured by the slant wells and delivered as clean water to someone else.
no, that's not what I would do.
That would
As
not-
I just said, what I would do is simulate them directly. So you have 2 scenarios, one that simulates the total under the no project conditions, and one that simulates the total under the project conditions. If I want the induced, I subtract one from the other. I don't measure or model the induced. I have to derive it from a model output.
The capture zone captures both induced and originally occurring seawater intrusion, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Perhaps when you were watching yesterday, you heard both Dr. Ye and Mr. Leffler comment that the solute transport model will be very useful for modeling ocean inflow. Do you agree with that?
No. The solute transport model will be useful to model solute.
And that won't help you understand how much ocean inflow there is.
No, ocean inflow is simulated by the flow model.
Okay. And so if you were going to monitor change in TDS, it would not give you any insight.
TDS is the solute, so the solute transport model will help us understand the distribution of solute.
But not be helpful to know where it comes from or where it goes.
The flow model simulates flow, solute model simulates solute. So it will help us to understand how the model predicts the resulting distribution of TDS will look, but it doesn't help us, it doesn't improve the simulation of flow over and above what the groundwater flow model simulates. The solute transport model is predicated on the results of the flow model.
And a particle, I think I heard you say, and I know you'll correct me, that the time component for particle tracking is irrelevant.
I said, if you want to understand the full nature or the full extent of the capture, then the time is irrelevant.
If you wanted to know the full extent of particle movement over the reasonable life of a project, would you use some number like the reasonable life of a project?
It depends under what conditions. If I want to understand where the water is being drawn from, then I could draw the capture zone. I would draw the capture zone on its full particle extent, because that's where water will be induced to move towards the project. If I want to understand where it's going to come from over a certain time period, then I would further investigate the time.
Okay. So the MC, and with your permission, I'm just going to call it the MCWD local model rather than the full acronym.
That's appreciated.
Okay. So the MCWD local model was predicated in part on a hydrological conceptual model.
Yes.
In fact, I think you and Ms. Nelson both thought that was fairly important, correct?
Yes. Every model has to be predicated on a conceptual model, a hydrogeologic conceptual model.
Okay. And was that completed before your June 1 model was delivered to the state board and to the other parties?
I mean, yes, it depends on the conceptual model is a pretty broad topic. So if you could be more specific, I can tell you which components of them were completed because they were necessarily had to be completed before any model could be constructed.
Well, maybe I'll tell you the ones I'm interested in. The layer approach was completed.
Yes,
The the base of each layer was completed.
the layer elevations were completed.
Thank
So
you.
the tops and bottoms of all the layers, yes.
Okay. Before I ask the question, can I use K value as the shorthand for conductivity?
That's fine.
Okay, was the K value completed?
In part because the model was recalibrated after June 1. So the K values were modified in order to re-achieve calibration relative to the modified boundary conditions.
And certainly the boundary conditions, as you've already testified, changed. So that wasn't completed before June 1.
That's correct, but the change wasn't part of a calibration effort. The change occurred because we recognized that we had made a mistake in the way that we translated the boundaries. So we corrected that mistake, which necessitated a recalibration.
Can we go to CalAm 158?
Okay, we'll put up exhibit CalAm 158.
And we'll start with page 1 so we can see what it is.
Okay, we now have page 1 of exhibit CalAm 158.
And perhaps you can scroll down.
We'll zoom out so we can read the whole page here.
Thank you. Do
Maybe
you recognize this document?
I believe it to be the review of MCWD's model performed by Dr. Ye.
Did you read it?
I did.
Okay. And I apologize, Mr. Illy, I want to go to figure 11, but I don't have the PDF number.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can find it. I may be able to help with the paper copy here. What figure is it you're looking for? Figure 11?
Yes.
Page 70.
Okay. Oh, he beat me to it. So try PDF page 70, Mr. Baldwin, and we'll see where we get.
Thank you. And if we could let Dr. Kincaid see the whole page for 1 minute so he knows what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, yeah, that may not have been figured. We want figure 11, so I think it's 2 pages down.
Correct.
Bear with us here just a moment. Something happened, I think, when she zoomed out. There we go. Now we have figure 11. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Size.
Thank you. No,
For some reason, it keeps clicking back, but we'll get there. I'm not quite sure why. Okay.
and then I'd like to zoom in on the upper right panel.
Okay.
And Dr. Kincaid, you see in the upper right-hand corner, this is a June 1 version of your layer 6, which is the lower 180-foot aquifer, horizontal hydraulic conductivities.
Yes.
Okay, and the number in the box, it represents conductivity on feet per day. Do you see that?
Yes.
And at least to my somewhat colorblind eye, there's a pair of rabbit ears that touches the coast where it says CMEX side that's sort of pink. And how many feet per day conductivity was there in this model layer on June 1?
It appears that there is 22.2.
All right, and then if we can just vertically scroll down a little bit. And you see in the upper right corner of the lower panel, the June 12th version, layer 6.
Yes,
That's the same layer that was in the upper panel, correct?
that's correct.
And the shape of the layer has changed dramatically, correct?
The shape of the zone has changed. Yes,
And the K value has changed from 22.2 to 283.37, correct?
I thought you were comparing the upper one.
Well, I'm comparing it at the CEMIC site. So do I have the right number for the K value
Okay.
that reaches the CEMIC site?
Oh, there. Yes,
So it went up more than tenfold, correct?
correct.
And the spatial boundary changed, correct?
The spatial boundary of the parameter zone changed. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And when you submitted the June 12th version, did you report that change to anyone?
Yes, we said that the hydraulic conductivity's changed.
On June 12th, you said that?
I believe we did.
In
If
the
I'm-
transmittal, in the transmittal to the state board?
I believe I did. I believe we said we recalibrated the model after modifying the boundary conditions.
And did you say anything that used the word K value or conductivity?
I don't recall, but in my mind, that's what recalibrated means. I recalibrated the model in the face of the changed boundary conditions, which means that the hydraulic conductivity values were modified. We took steps to make sure that they remained within the range that we had defined as acceptable for each polygon. And in some cases, obviously, we changed some of the polygon definitions.
Would this change be consistent with changing the hydrologic conceptual model?
No, because the conductivities are still consistent with an aquifer, the lower 180-foot aquifer. The layer elevations haven't changed, but we have changed the hydraulic conductivity. So to the extent that it's modified to have different flow capabilities, then yes, but that's what is, in my mind, that's what is implied when I said I recalibrated the model.
Okay. And can we go to the next page, which is figure 12, and you can leave it zoomed in.
Okay, we'll go to, this will be PDF. We're going to exhibit Callan 158, PDF page 71, figure 12.
And we're now looking at the same sort of illustration, except it affects layer 8, which is your 400-foot aquifer, correct?
Correct.
And you see the CEMIC site is on a thin strip of blue colored land, which has a 500 foot per day conductivity.
Correct.
And the brown irregular shape near it, but not reaching the shoreline, has a 600 foot per day conductivity, correct?
Correct.
And then on June 12th, with your new model, can we scroll down?
Scroll down a little.
We first have new spatial boundaries for these two zones. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the 600 was reduced to 114, correct?
Correct. Well,
I'm sorry, I have it backwards. The 500 was reduced to 114. Do you want to scroll up to
the
see?
500 appears to have been reduced to 70.86.
No, I think that's the 600. That's why I
Well,
lost.
they're different polygons or whatever.
It's
you
really
call
difficult
things.
to,
So it's
Yeah,
hard.
but
to
We can
compare.
scroll out one if that'll help you.
but what you've done is taken us to the problem that occurred that was why we identified that we were concerned about our model to begin with. And it led us to identifying the problem with the boundary conditions. So you can see, if you scroll up, that very high hydraulic conductivities open the door to an unreasonable amount of ocean inflow. It has nothing to do with the CEMEX site, it has to do with the simulation of ocean inflow. And so from that, we obviously knew that 500 feet per day is like an open avenue, allowing a lot of ocean inflow. So we said, man, what's causing the 500? We searched around in the model until we identified that the boundary conditions were driving it. We researched the boundary conditions and determined that we had made a mistake in the boundary condition assignments. So we corrected that mistake, and then we recalibrated the model. The model on top those polygons were largely driven by pest using a pilot point parameterization. The model on the bottom, we constrained to give pest more guidance, and we ended up with the polygons that we have. So that's the process that occurred.
So we can take this down. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Dr. Kincaid, you were happier with your model after June 12th, I take it.
Because it better simulated ocean inflow.
Okay. And once you got to that spot, I thought I heard you testify that you locked in the GHB, is that general head boundary?
Yes, the GHB is assigned as fixed in all models. It would have been fixed, but we found a problem with it, so we changed it.
Right. I'm just saying after that, you didn't change it again.
That's correct.
Okay. And you didn't change conductivity again, correct?
I don't know. No, we didn't change conductivities again.
Okay. And when you ran the scenarios, and you know what I'm talking about when I say the scenarios,
Yes.
right? When you ran those, you used the calibrated model?
We used the calibrated June 12 model, except we made some changes to that because like for instance, the CEMEX ponds would not be operative any longer. So we removed those in order to run the forward scenario analyses.
Right. In fact, I think, again, I'll ask if you were here when.
Yes, Dr. Ye said the same thing.
Correct. I'm sorry. You have to let me ask my question. Okay. I know you wanted to agree with me. Mr. Lilly asked the question whether Dr. Ye did the same thing. And you just said he did. And you did. You both removed those ponds.
Yes. We have different ways of simulating them, but both of us removed the simulation from our forward analysis.
Okay. Did anything else change other than the scenarios themselves, right? So obviously you have sigma projects that would cause a lot of changes in C and D, but nothing else changed between June 12th and June 16th?
Not to my knowledge at this right now, no.
And although I have not had a chance to study them, as if my studying would be important, it would be at my experts, but for the new vertical transmissivity for the test slant well that was supplied this morning to produce some new illustrations that use the calibrated model also?
It's the exact same models with a different well file. And the only thing different about the well file is the distribution of pumping for the 8 proposed slant wells with respect to the aquifer layers.
All right. Can we, okay, I've got 5 minutes, Mr. Lee, to give you a cushion. Is that about right?
You can go for 10. It's fine. I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Could
Well,
we go
if you get a logical break before then, that's fine.
Okay. Could we go to 161 slide 18?
Is this MCWD 161?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Dr. Kincaid's slides.
Okay. MCP 161 slide, which?
Slide 18, if I have my numbering right.
Okay. We have slide 18 on the screen. Go ahead.
Okay. Dr. Kincaid, have you ever been to the Salinas River?
I have. Well, I haven't recreated in the Salinas River, but I've crossed it multiple times.
And the Spreckles gauging station is pretty far upstream from the coast, correct?
That's correct.
And the cross section of the river at the gauging station is very different than the cross section farther downstream, correct?
I would assume so, yes.
There isn't a gauging station farther downstream, correct?
That's correct.
So that's why you use the Spreckles gauging station?
That's correct.
And would the cross section of the river, if it widens and slows, be relevant to modeling the percolation from the river?
The cross section of the river is, of course, relevant, but the most important things are the head and the assigned specific conductance. So the stage would be the right word to use, and the specific conductance.
Okay. And I believe you used, and I might only have part of the title, but something we call the river package to model stream percolation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there are certain inputs needed for the river package, including one of them being the river bottom.
That's correct.
Okay. And you used 1 foot for the river bottom?
No, we used, we made a slope from our estimated bottom of the river at the Spreckles gauge down to the ocean. And then we assumed the bottom elevation at a depth of 1.0076 feet. Gotta love engineers. All the way to the ocean.
Okay. I could round that to 1.0 if it's okay with you.
It'd be okay with me.
Isn't it true that the river package defines the river bottom as the head plus the thickness of the stream bed depth?
The river bottom is defined as a set specification, and then the head, the stage, is assigned as a set specification, and then those are compared to the simulated head in the cell to determine the direction of flow, and the flow is then estimated on the basis of the cell conductivity and the stream bed conductance.
All right, so let me ask it in a simpler way. Is the stream bed depth, not the elevation of the water, the stream bed thickness itself, an input to the river package, in your opinion?
Yes.
And did you use one?
I just explained how we did it. We assumed a declining line from the gauging station to the ocean, following the path, and made the depth 1.0076 feet below and assumed, to be honest, I don't know exactly how we did it. Rather, we used an assumed topographic elevation to get the resulting bottom, or we projected the stage and then subtracted it down from there. In my mind, the difference won't be very different either way.
In the second bullet, where you comment on Cal-Am's approximately 6 feet, you pulled that out of their model, correct?
That's correct.
And that model showed stream bed depth and water combined at 6 feet, correct?
I did not perform the query, I asked them to tell me what this average stream depth was, and that's what they returned. So I believe that is the average depth of the stream along the reach within the model domain.
Who is the they you just identified?
Brian Peck on my team.
Have you ever looked at the Monterey Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Plan model?
I've looked at that together with my team quite extensively. I haven't opened it up and inspected it myself. No.
Isn't it true that it uses for the Salinas River a 6-foot stream depth?
I don't know.
Mr. Lilly, is that a good place to stop before I go to a new topic?
I think so. Let's just go ahead and do that. Thank you. Try to have some logic here in our process. So it's 1:57. I think I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. We'll say you took 40 minutes today for your cross-examination. So I would like you to try to complete your cross-examination tomorrow. So it's a total of 2 hours, which would be another 1 hour and 20 minutes for both witnesses. So please try to aim that as your target. I mean, if you're 1 or 2 minutes over, that will be okay. But if you're more than that, I'm going to probably cut you off. And again, it's just in fairness to the other side's attorneys, who I did fairly strictly limit to their cross-ex time.
I am not objecting.
So what? And thank you. And I'm just explaining. I'm trying to be fair here. So let's do that. And then, as I say, I will be working with my staff probably this evening on our questions. And I'll see. I suspect I'll have you continue, just so I won't interrupt you in the middle of your cross-examination. And then we'll have our follow-up questions, and if any, and then deal with if there's any redirect and exhibits. But I think we'll be in good shape, and then can start with Dr. Trudell tomorrow after we finish with this panel. So again, I appreciate all of your understanding of my need to reschedule. We will be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So everybody have a good afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you, and best wishes to your family member.